Good morning. This is Sweetie Berry with Between Us Girls. This is a weekly broadcast of the Women of Dare Whimsy. This week, we're going to be discussing how environment affects our ease, or how to create ease in your environment. We're going to be looking at three different levels of environment: our physical environment, our social choices in environment, and our emotional choices for environment. The Women of Dare Whimsy are creative and gifted women who gather each week at 10 o'clock on Wednesday mornings for Between Us Girls. It's a conversation on surviving the adventures of giftedness. This morning I'm tickled to death to see four of us already here, and to let you know that you'll be speaking with each one of us. On Thursdays, we have a blog post that follows up this conversation on environment and creating ease in your life, where each of our writers from Dare Whimsy add their purpose and their point of what creates ease in their environments. I'm sure that one of them will resonate with you, and you can follow them home in reading more on the subject or more on the offerings that they have on the subject. We have everything from attorneys to doctors to stay-at-home moms in the Women of Dare Whimsy, so I'm sure you'll find someone you resonate with. And please leave comments so that we can follow you home and get to know your blog or website as well. Good morning. You know, environment has a lot to do with how our daily lives exist. You know, whether it's the physical environment of where you actually are each day and how many places you are each day, whether it's the social environment of the kinds of people you choose to be around, or sometimes in a work situation are forced to be around, and how you handle that knowledge between your two ears can create ease or discomfort in your world. So today we're going to be talking a good bit about how physical environment can affect, first of all. Second of all, how your social choices affect the creation of ease in your life. And third of all, how the emotional things that we think, how we think and what we think about, how that creates ease in your life. First up is going to be Dr. Martina McGowan. Dr. Martina is a writer at martinamcgowan.com. She also is a medical physician, a gynecologist, as well as a minister. She helps people make changes through one simple step at a time, and she works with them to recognize change and the steps to make the next thing happen. Good morning, Martina.
Good morning, Shannon. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad for an old lady, not bad.
This morning, I'd love for you to talk about how your own physical environment. I know you've just gone through a respite period of after a surgery, and you've been in a house for a few months now, and you've had to learn how to change environments from being a busy doctor in a surgical ward and in a clinic and strictly to at home while you recuperate. How has that environment affected you?
Well, the most important thing I've discovered in making ease in my own environment is knowing my own rhythm. I am a morning person, and certainly, like you've described, I've just gotten over a major surgery, and I'm still recovering to try to get back into that rhythm. But if I can, and I'm beginning to once again get up early in the morning, I can write, I can think, I can create, I can go for a walk in the park. My best physical environment change has to be morning peace, whether it's for meditation or devotion or like I said, or writing, or very rarely talking to a few friends. But I don't start the day checking emails and catching up on Facebook. I have to get the physical, internal environment set first.
Oh, that's so important to know. You know, as you well know, I'm a morning person as well, and there's just a schedule of my tone of environment that works better in the daylight early hours. And likewise, my environment needs to be pretty clutter-free first thing in the morning. I go to a desk that I've already cleared the night before. I go to a space where just my laptop is open, and like you, I very much limit what I am on social media. First thing in the morning, I have a message about gratitude that I put up first thing, and then I actually close out of social media, usually for the next hour and a half to 2 hours, because social media can be so interruptive to my ease. I see announcements that may upset me, or I may see an email that upsets me. So I'm very careful not to go check email first thing in the morning. The first thing I do, it has to do with productivity for the goals for me. There's quiet time, there's solitude time, there's devotional time, and then there's writing time for me, or working on projects time. That creating the environment of ease for me is limiting how many interrupters to my train of thought there are. I'm very attention deficit at times, so it's very easy for me to flip from one section to another section to another section of what's got my attention. And I find that even leaving the tabs up on my computer, where I might be tempted to click over to Facebook or click over to TweetDeck, really is interruptive of the process of me writing. So I tend to only open one tab during the morning, and that tab is whatever blog or professional writing I'm doing that morning. Or if I'm dialoguing with a client, I try to shut down everything but where the window is for that client, because as many of you know as clients and as friends, I get interrupted if I don't. You'll hear something in the background ringing in or trying to get to me the rest of the morning. And so part of that environment change is learning to limit what are the possibilities for distraction. Dr. Edith, I would love for you to share with us how that projects into your life.
Well, thank you, Shanna. And as Martina was saying and you've said, I am a more early morning one when it comes to creativity or thinking, but I need to start my morning with routine. And so I have to get up, and I have to have a couple hours just to get moving, get things organized in my own head, and things like that. But then I also, as I go through the day, I can work intensely on a project for maybe 30 to 90 minutes, and then my body says, I've got to move. I've got to move because I've been sitting still. So I literally will go from my basement where my office is, go upstairs, go outdoors, whatever, check mail, anything.
Absolutely. I think that sometimes our physical environments, I see Dr. Edith may be having difficulties with her internet right this second. Physical environments matter greatly. When I was a school teacher, it was not unusual at all for me to need to really recognize those students I had before me's energy needs, because the energy environment is very high too. For me personally, I need to be able to move around. I need to be able to go from a standing position to a sitting sideways position to in a chair position. I need to be able to move about in my office. Even in my office, I have a desk that I write at, a desk that I do physical writing at, a desk that I stand at. And so I can move within the small office space to 3 different positions, as well as I have a love seat couch that I sit with clients, or I can sit with my laptop and do work privately. Our environment can also mean the colors and the looks of things that are around us. And I know Bobby Corman has a lot of conversation about that and what it requires for her to be comfortable and at ease in her environment. Good morning, Bobby.
Good morning, sweetie. That is so true with me. I have the house that I live in is a rental, so I can't go and change the walls to wild colors. But just this week, while I've been down, I finished some bright yellow curtains with a really fun, whimsical chicken pattern on it, and it just made me happy, just putting a little splash of color with a little bit of whimsy, just like we do here in Dare Whimsy. And I find all the time, if I can bring a little bit of color or a little bit of something that's really fun into my environment, it really helps me, because that's the way that I am. It helps me be more creative. It helps me be more calm. And so sometimes, you know, there are other people that like colors that are more suited to them. Some people like the earthy browns and tans, and that's wonderful for them. I just happen to be one that needs to have a bright pink somewhere in the room. And as I look around where I'm sitting right now, there's a lot of bright pink in this room.
Excellent, because you know, our visual environment really affects us, whether it's organization level or whether it is the level of brightness and color reflection. I know for me personally, I like black, white, and ivory, but in my work zone, I almost use a sage or a tan or things that are very benign, so I can keep the activity in my head and not in the color around me. Good morning, Gail Roddy. I'm glad to see you this morning. I'd love for you to share with us how your environment works and what works to create ease in your personal environment and professional environment.
Good morning, ladies. It seems like we have lots of early risers. I, too, am one who likes to get up at 5 or 5:15. I'd get up at 4 if I wouldn't disturb other people in the house. But I get up about 5, and I have a routine, and I feel that that gets my morning set, too. I totally agree with Edith and Dr. Martina. The first thing I have to do is walk the dog because he's ready to go. So that gets me outside and gets me in the air and gets me moving. So that's a routine 7 days a week, first thing in the morning. But as I was listening to all of you, one thing is, for me, the visual. As Bobby said, she has to have color. Now, when I come downstairs from the bedroom into the living room and the kitchen, the first thing I see, I have an abundance of plants, abundance of greenery. And that sight of that life, that green life, is just, it's just so energizing for me. And of course there's science behind it, that green plants clean the air, and it definitely works for my health. So that's one that really is of necessity for me, to have life around me and to see it the first thing in the morning.
Absolutely. I see Lucy Ann Mile has joined us. Lucy, I'd love to hear what works your environment, what creates ease in your physical environment, which is the conversation. Oh goodness, let's make sure that we have your auditory on. All right, you should be live. No, at our end it's unmuted, but at your end it may not be. Now try again. Okay. We had chipmunks again this morning. I'm not sure why, but it is definitely going. Let me come back to you in just a minute, because you're coming up as a chipmunk voice. Our second section this morning is we want to talk about how our social choices create the environment for ease in our lives. You know, who we hang around with, who we listen to, who we're involved with can often affect how our creative ease is in our life. For me personally, that means that I limit the kind of people I'm around who are negative. I limit those who like to, what I call, stir the pot, people who are more interested in talking about other people than the subject at hand or the work at hand. Now, I'm very careful in my social engagements to identify with people who are on the same page with me as far as the outcomes of their lives, the kind of activities that they value, the type of behavioral choices that they value in their life. Because personally, while I like all kinds of people, I find that if I spend a tremendous amount of time with people who don't have shared values of how we treat family, how we treat our professional life, how we treat the project life that we're involved in, that creates disease in my life. It creates a friction that doesn't have to be there. And while I may enjoy someone who's a lot louder or a lot more into social activities that maybe I don't participate in, every now and then that might be enjoyable to have lunch or dinner or hang out with them. What I've found is I very much limit that in my process so that I can create comfort in my environment. Because if someone's acting out or they're talking about people in ways that I'm not comfortable with, or they're personally acting out in ways I'm not comfortable with, they're drinking or they're doing things that I just don't appreciate or value at a large extent, then I learn to limit that. Again, it's a boundary call for me personally, because my environment gets very full very fast. I have a lot of activities at business, I have a lot of activities at home, a lot of activities at our church. And so I really want to spend time and effort in the spaces that matter most to me. And I want to have boundaries on what I say yes to, which means I have to have a lot of boundaries on what I say no to. You know, we really have a very limited amount of time. And our environment is so affected by the choices we choose. We choose whether to put ourselves in front of people who are into drama. We choose whether to put ourselves into friendships that consistently have repetitive patterns, that somebody gets mad, somebody blows up, somebody walks off. You know, if you're in that pattern, you're choosing to stay in that pattern, and sometimes you can simply step out. Sometimes you can help change the behavior of the group by not being a part of it. Sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes you can't leave a group, and maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's an ex-wife or an ex-spouse that you cannot change the situation, but you can limit the social environment you're involved with. You don't really have to be involved in every step of the way. Maybe you need to change the way you communicate. Maybe you need to go from personal contact on the phone to emails only, which sometimes are less emotionally charged. Maybe it means that you need to attend a meeting, but you need to exit directly after the meeting instead of spending an hour afterwards where the negativity begins. Maybe you need to limit the level of a phone call. You know, I found a long time ago as a blended family, mom and stepmom, that if we were on the phone for 3 minutes with any of the family members outside of our direct home, it could be positive and pleasant and lovely and information was shared. But after minute 3, it started becoming something much more negative. Either a problem was drawn up or someone mentioned somebody's problem with someone else that wasn't even the conversation we were having. And before we knew it, the whole thing went south. And I don't mean south to Florida where it was a lovely vacation. I mean a very negative conversation. So sometimes the social choices we make directly affect and create ease in our environment or disease, depending on who we choose. Dr. Edith, would you like to speak to that a little bit?
Social ease being who we choose to be around. I think we need to recognize our own introvert, extrovert tendencies, our own preferences, so that we can choose the social settings that we have the most ease at, and also that means we're going to have the most contribution too. So I make personal decisions that way, and at the same time, if I go and I'm leaning toward the introvert side and the withdrawn side because that's really easy, then I also see it make a conscious effort of saying, these friends are important in my life, these people are important in my life, so I will schedule them into my life so that we can have those extra interactions. Because that ease is important to me because it's part of a connection, and that supports both of our energies to be able to live more. So both directions, limiting in what I'm involved in, and yet at the same time making sure that I don't withdraw, because then that doesn't become at ease, so that I can interact with those that are important to me.
Absolutely. Gail Roddy, who has a program, Calling All Friends to the Well, consistently has conversations with women of all ages, part of her Calling All Mothers to the Well program, where she encourages intergenerational conversations. Gail, how do you see that social choices really affect people's ease in their daily life?
Well, Dr. Edith brought up a really great point. If I can speak about my own life in social situations, I'm pretty much the same way. I can get too isolated because when I'm around a lot of people or certain people, I start taking on their emotions. I'm very much absorbing of other people's emotions. And so I'll leave, and later I'll be agitated or I'll be angry, and I'll be thinking on, now what did you do, what's going on, and then I have to stop and realize, no, that's not me. I took on that person's anger or their agitation or their sorrow. So it's taken me years to learn this, but what I have learned to do is limit my time when I go out to lunch with people. I'm one of those women, as you say, calling all mothers to the well. I love to connect with women and talk and talk and listen and listen and listen. I can be 4 hours with someone listening to them. And so I know Dr. Edith does that professionally, but I can't do that. And I have learned over the years, I simply have to limit it to an hour. And it may be enjoyable and I don't want to leave, but I know that if I do not limit it, I will not be good for my family, my husband, or the next person I encounter. I've learned that I have to limit it.
Excellent. Dr. Martina, how does the ease with our social connections and ease in our daily life affect our health? And what do you see as a leader who talks in ministry and speaks with people about change? How much in control are we of what happens in our social connections? What do you think is our responsibility to ourselves and to others on how we create ease?
Well, one of the problems is that we're not taught generally, I think, to take 100% responsibility for our lives. Whether we're talking about ministry, as you mentioned, in church, not everybody that's in church is on the same page. You have to figure out which people are moving forward, which people are draining, and like all the other ladies have said before, which ones are taking away and not adding anything to the situation. It doesn't make you a bad guy, it doesn't make you a bad Christian, but not everybody is for you, and not everybody is on the same road or on the same path. So somewhere along the line, you have to figure out the boundaries, as you've said, to pick up more fellow travelers and spend time with them and get rid of the negative and draining people. And again, in a church situation, that's not always an easy thing to do, but it is necessary for your mental health and for your physical health, because they will drain you dry and not look back. But what you want to find are people who are on the same path, but who are also mutually supportive. They want to move ahead, you want them to move ahead, and they want the same good things for you. They're not just out to take away from you. They're out to feed something good and wonderful into your life and expect the same from you.
That's completely right, and such valuable words of information, because not everybody is on the same page. They're not on the same page with their goals, with their awareness of their life, or even that they're doing the things that they may be doing to create negativity in their life. One of the things as a classroom teacher and a virtual teacher, online teacher and strategist, I have learned to put in some qualifiers. We were talking just this morning, Gail and I, about some people who are in a class who want to go forward with the next class session or the next introduction to how to do more with the class we just finished. And I said, you know, the problem for me is that some people are not ready to move forward, and so they don't need to be in the next class, because in order to be an active engager, to have an environment of learning and actuating, then I want the group to be people who are in the field with it right now, that they have what we're doing and they're actually doing it, because that experiencing is very different than projecting what it might be. You know, that's true also in creating ease in our social group. You know, it's very often when people, maybe the first identifier is where they stay single or got married or were in a serious relationship, and that starts to divide the people, or people even who chose to go to college versus people who didn't choose to go to college. That sometimes can be a dividing place in your social choices. Same thing is true when you're an entrepreneur. If you're working with only stay-at-home moms and you're not a stay-at-home mom, there may be some social conflict in your ease because they have time to do things differently maybe than you do. And the pressure to perform not only at work but as a stay-at-home mom may sneak up on you, and you may not recognize the self-pressure you put on yourself that creates disease in your life when you're comparing apples to oranges. You know, that whole comparison game is very difficult. And when we're talking about creating ease, I really like to identify on my calendar, on my day planner, who am I interacting with? And you know, sometimes I need to take the responsibility to realize if I choose to interact with those people, it's creating stress in my life. And likewise, I need to recognize what I'm not putting on that calendar that creates ease in my life with social things. I know that there are several of my friends that if I have breakfast, lunch, or even coffee via the internet, I have a much better week because they're helping me keep perspective. They are on my boat, and I'm on their boat too. And we're on the same page about the kind of lives we want to live. But if I don't plan for those kind of interactions, if I stay in work mode, if I stay in tasking mode, or if I stay in deal with very difficult people mode, because sometimes I have to do that in projects, we can't always choose who we work with. Gosh, you really limit the ease that you have in your life, and pretty soon that can seem like it is your life, and it will take over your life if you're not careful. Lucy, let's see if we can get you back in without that chipmunk sound, and I'll have you unmuted at this end, and let's see if it works for us now. Oh, goodness. We're back to the chipmunk sound. I'm so sorry, Lucy. We would certainly love you to have this conversation. If you'd like to put some comments on the slide, I'll be happy to add those into the conversation. All right. In our third segment, we're talking about the space between our ears. You know, the one thing each and every one of us have are the thoughts and the processes inside our own heads. And we're talking about how to create an environment of ease. It always comes back to that self-talk and the boundaries and the thoughts that we have about our daily life. You know, if we're constantly telling myself, I'm behind, I'm behind, I'm behind, guess what? There's not much ease in feeling behind. If you're responding to the mistake of, oh, how stupid I am. I know Lucy spoke to this in a product she made recently, that she said that her self-talk would go really overboard in being negative about simply a mistake. And so that creating an environment of ease, you know, one of the things I've mentioned before is there's a Michael Bublé song that talks about, I just haven't met her yet. And I changed the lyrics in my head to say, I just haven't learned that yet when I make a mistake, because I am a good learner, I am teachable, and I am willing to learn, which are important things to know about yourself. Because if something's not working, it may be you learned it differently than it needs to be to work for you. It may work for somebody else that way, but it's not working for you. And so part of our creating environments of ease is setting up realistic expectations. You know, I mentioned a week ago that it's sometimes easy for me to get so busy I don't even want to write down all the taskings I'm doing in a day, because if I had to face all of those check mark boxes I was facing on a single sheet of paper, I would immediately say to anyone who saw it and myself, that's ridiculous. That's way too much to expect out of one person in one single day. We can fool ourselves into believing that all of the multi-mini tasks, M-I-N-I tasks, do not add up to tiresome environments. But the truth is, sometimes the multitasking things we do really take over the maximum things we're trying to do. Checking email is one of those. So many of my clients as a strategist talk to me about email management. And when I get into email management with them, they may be facing 100, 200, 300, 400 emails a day. And my email box sometimes can have 800 emails a day in it when we're in a big project. But often in the individual person, it becomes something that's very clear. You go to their email box with them, and they have 60% advertisers. They've signed up for a list. They've not recognized that they could go to their email rules and set up a rule where all the advertisements and promotions go to a file until they have time to look at them. Well, that may solve half their problem in one simple step. But another step would be, why is it that you're signing up for newsletters and email offers on a place where you're trying to do work? It may be that it needs to be simply another email address that doesn't come to that inbox, so that you physically have to go to that box to look at the sales ads, the class advertisements, things that are distractors for you. That's an easy way to create some emotional ease and to take the pressure off you. If it's out of sight, it's usually out of mind, and that keeps you from having the desire to go look at just what sells on at JCPenney or Macy's, or perhaps to look at someone else's course offerings when you're trying to create your own, and that's distracting you as you compare yourself to each step of what comes in throughout a 10-day period. Now, those are great research pieces. It's always good to see what somebody else's email chain or somebody else's example is. But perhaps you need to really eliminate some things in the process emotionally. Maybe you need to barter with yourself to say, you know what, during this 3 hours, I'm not going to consider the problems my child is having. I'm going to consider only the work that's before me, and I will take the family considerations to this amount of time. Or maybe if it's a really oppressive time, like I have a friend today who's having surgery, and it's something I'd like to take the whole day off and just sit in the waiting room with them, but that's not possible. And so I've scheduled times throughout the day today that I'll stop and call in and check in with them and see how they're doing, and then I'll work in between times. Those are emotional boundaries that can be set to help us go forward. Gail, I'd like to pass it, or actually, Dr. Edith, I'm going to pass it back to you to begin our popcorn session. And what we mean by popcorn is each of us are going to give a quick entry on what we do to create ease in our environment that works for us. And if you'd call on the next person after you, and I suspect right now we're going to need to skip Lucy. Lucy, if you'll give me a written answer in text, I'll be happy to share yours.
Okay, so what do I do to create ease in my life? We talked about routines. We talked about, for me, I have to get outdoors periodically. I have to have some fresh air. I choose and protect my time so that I have me time. And then at the same time, I'm conscious about interacting with family, friends, and colleagues so that I don't just withdraw. So it's a give and take of energy to be able to have that energy which creates ease for me. All right, Dr. Martina, it's all yours.
Thanks, Edith. My most important goal is always to find my inner peace. I need to protect that to protect everything else. If I can find peace even in the most chaotic situation, I can help others move into an area of peace. I can take care of whatever the crisis is. I can find some peace of mind and move forward. I don't have to get caught up in every bit of drama that comes my way, but I can usually help find a path forward, help them find the next step out. And so, at that point, I'll turn it over to Gail.
Well, I would say the same thing the other ladies have said. I have learned over the last 10 years to make boundaries that I never used to have as much. And with the internal dialogue between my ears, as Sweetie said, I've really had to understand this year that this is a common occurrence with gifted girls, that we can spin and spin and spin on things and not focus. So being in Dare Whimsy has helped me to understand that I'm not alone. I thought I was the only one who learned real fast and told herself, well, you should learn that because you always learn everything. So it's been good for me to learn to have that boundary within my own mind. And I'm going to pop it over to, are we going to try Lucy and see if we can?
I think that hers just isn't going, so I'm going to share her part of it today. So if I'll take that last space, I'll be glad to. Lucy wanted to share that, you know, one of the most important strategies for her as a Christian counselor is to encourage people to take the ungodly thoughts, the thoughts that were stupid, that were not enough, that were just ridiculous and replace them with what God says about us. Because it's so important to tell yourself the truth. And the truth is you may have made a mistake, but that doesn't mean you're a mess up. Excellent words, Lucy. Excellent words. My personal thing is to really get down to basics. For me, it's so easy for me as a visual learner not to see what I'm doing to myself. And so to stop and to look at the planning, first of all, to create ease in my life. If I don't force myself to put it on paper, I use a planner really religiously, and if I don't put it on paper, what's happening, and block out times first, not last, but first for personal time, for family time, for play time, for solitude time, then fit in the rest of my life, I tend to not give myself that space. And so one of the things I do now is on my planner, you will see color blocks of time that are absolutely my best times of the day. I used to give clients always only the best times of my day, but now I have readjusted that some, and my very best hours of the day, which for me is between 4:30 in the morning and 7:30, are non-interrupters for just me. That's for my writing, that's for my working in the garden in the summer, that's for the things I do the best for me. But also a quick tip is one to just, at the end of morning, noon, and night, I usually do it with mealtime, I'll stop and put a smiley face, a straight line face, or an unhappy face, and just kind of get a grip by the end of the week of where are my happiest times. You know, was I happy this morning? Was I just neutral this morning? Was I just working? Was I experiencing a lot of stress? You know, that simple happy face, straight line face, down face has really shown me some weeks that there are activities, sometimes people, sometimes projects, and I need to reevaluate the value in my life because they're showing me that I'm not experiencing the work that I love to do in a way that's joyful to do it. So that's a way that I've changed my environment. And I certainly this year have tried out where I actually work in several different locations, in our house and in our office space in Nashville, so that I can recognize that sunlight really matters to me, and that the colors of a room really matter to me, and the way that I handle my desk really matter to me. And so that's become more awareness of what makes it easy for me. We're at the end of our time. This is our first week to go to a 30-minute format. On Thursdays at darewhimsy.com, you'll find a fresh post that follows up this conversation, where each of our writers of the Women of Dare Whimsy have added their hints and their tips on what creates ease in their environment and how environment affects their ease. We hope that you'll come and read those short sister posts, and then if one of them speaks to you or resonates with you, follow them home to their website to find out more about what they do and how this affects how they function in life as professionals. We hope that you'll leave comments so we can follow you home too and learn more about you as a gifted woman. DareWhimsy.com is our website for creative and gifted women. It's a community of women who conversate and share articles and information on how to live this adventure of being a gifted and creative woman. We hope you'll join us next week on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central Time for another hangout between us girls. Thank you for joining us today.